Hello again, everyone. Wondering if you're ready for round two. So, same materials, although I've had to bust out the pencil extender because my little pencils are getting so short. If you weren't here for the last one, this is the Durwent dark charcoal pencil. This is the Royal and Langnickel, I think it's a medium charcoal pencil. This one we'll be starting out with, and we'll be using this one to darken. We have the M&R trusty handheld sharpener, blender, little eyeshadow makeup brush blender, and two Tombow stick erasers. I believe this is the 5mm and this is the 2mm. Those are just for carving out highlights and basically drawing with. I'm trying to do minimal lines, just like we did with this one. What I'm finding out from trying to work on different facial positions, whether it's profile, and if I didn't mention, that's what we're doing today, is the profile. Even with the upward or downward facing, I haven't worked on 3/4 yet because that one is usually like my default, easy to draw, you know, just kind of my go-to, but I haven't done it with this format yet. But what I am finding out is that I actually can do the exact same measurements and the exact same guidelines, which are very minimal. 2 for this one originally, 2 for most others. With profile will require 3. And they're just as minimal though, as far as being able to incorporate them with minimal erasing. So, but what I am finding out with those measurements are they're transferable to all of the different facial positions. So what I thought would happen is that this basic format wouldn't be able to translate to the other ones, and I'd have to come up with completely different formats, but it's very interesting because it is not true. So I'll show you what I mean. We're gonna start out, oh, looks like I need to sharpen this. We're gonna start out doing a similar starting point as this one, where I just draw the guidelines, which are just, in this case, they're just going to be 3 instead of 2, but they're still vertical. And I believe that with the profile, it's only important to do it with 3 with the profile, because the profile has the ear in the middle of the head, and basically it's like the central focus, as in with most other portrait positions, the nose is the central focus. So yeah. All right, let me make sure I'm in frame. Just gonna move it up a little bit because I'm using the bottom of this page. So this part won't matter. Again, just like this one, you put your guidelines as wide apart as you want them to be. Sometimes it's a stylistic choice. If you're drawing like men, women, or children, that will vary. So when I did this one, we just had 2 straight guidelines on the sides before we started. They could have been closer together or further apart, doesn't really matter. If you were going to do a man's portrait, those would probably be a little bit longer, just because the length of the chin is going to be longer, and the distance between the eyes and the nose would lengthen the nose and things like that. For a child, you'd want it to be slightly shorter for these guidelines, so that the face is more like round and has that squishy look like little babies do. So initially these lines aren't going to matter as far as the length of them, and you'll be able to determine whether that's, you know, adjustable as you experiment with this format. So I'm going to draw 3 equal vertical lines. When I was first doing profiles, I would often get the back of the head either way too far out or way too like close, and it would just look strange, but I figured out that this kind of helps put that in the right place. These may not be exactly apart, but or equally apart, but I mean, I could move this if I wanted to. I'm just going to leave it like that though. I'll just also demonstrate that these don't need to be like perfectly measured, like with a ruler, to make sure they're exactly equidistant, but it'll be fine. As long as the lines are the same length. That's kind of important for placement. Okay, not this one though. This one doesn't have to be the same length. It's just to indicate the back of the head. So we will start out as we did before with the eyebrow, which would be at the top of this first line. And the only real difference in drawing profiles is that, as with a front-facing profile, everything can be marked in straight with a straight line. With a side profile, everything is going to look like, what is that, the greater than or less than sign? You know, there's going to be a lot of those. There's going to be a lot of, I'm just going to draw it right here. There's going to be a lot of these types of shapes. Okay, so just keep that in mind when drawing eyes, nose, mouth, all that. It's going to be a lot of these exaggerated triangular shapes with a slight roundness to them. So with the eyebrow, you're not going to draw it exactly like you would up here, because that would just, it would flatten out the side of the face. You want everything to be indicated looking this way. So the eyebrow is going to be slightly squished, going like that. One of the things I was troubleshooting when I was just discovering this format translation is that I was worried that this straight line was going to flatten the front of the face too much, but it ends up working out after you put the nose and the mouth and the chin in. Everything connects, and it creates that protrusion that you would see from the side on somebody's face. Usually when you're looking at someone, even from the extreme perfectly angled side, as long as they're not turning the other way, you will see a tiny little indication of their other eyebrow. So I'm just going to put that in. It's just a little line, a little squiggle there. So you will have two eyebrows showing. And now you're going to put the bottom of your nose in at the bottom of this line. And you're going to start at the line, but you're going to go out this way. If you go here and you just draw it right under it like you did with this one, it's going to flatten the face. So you need to take it outward. So we're just going to make a slight curve protruding in the direction that the person is facing. Now you're going to take your first measurement. You're going to take the eyebrow, preferably the top of the eyebrow and the bottom of the nose, and you're going to translate that for the chin. Just make a mark there for the chin. You can start to draw a line toward this middle line here, because this is going to be where the jaw forms. And I'm not going to connect it all the way. You could, but you know, I like broken lines. So you're going to take the bottom of the nose, go across, and this is going to be your ear. And because you're front facing the ear, as you would not be in any other facial position, the ear is going to be looking at you straight on. It is actually larger than you would expect it to be. And you can make sure that it's in the right place by marking the bottom of the earlobe here to match with the corner of the nose. I'm not going to do the whole ear yet until I do the eye so that I know exactly where the top of the ear lands. And we will just make a small line in between the nose and the chin for the mouth, because in between the nose and the chin is the mouth. So we're going to go back up here to the eyes, and slightly below, directly below the corner of the eyebrow, I'm going to come down just a little bit where the nose bridge would be curving inward. If you look at our top portrait, it's where it curves inward right here. That's where you're going to put the corner of the eye. So although we haven't drawn that nose bridge part yet, you can imagine that this line going from the eyebrow to about here where the nose bridge would curve inward, that's where you're going to put your first mark for the eye. And that's just the corner of the eye. Now, to actually draw the eye, you're going to take this corner that you just draw, the dot for that corner, goes directly across, and put the other corner. And the reason we're not drawing a line is because you'll see in a second that we need this to be one of those little angular triangle shapes, just like we did the nose, or I showed you up here. All right, so from the outer corner of the eye, you're going to go upward above that first mark that we made for the eye. And to help establish more of the eye's position, I'm going to put a little eyelash there. And on the other side of the nose bridge, I'm going to poke out some little eyelashes there, because sometimes you will see that when you're looking at someone from the side view. Now I'm going to come back into the eye and put the iris, and it is going to be extremely exaggerated in a flattened oval. So we kind of lost our little inner corner there. I'm going to put it back. And now we're going to put the top of our ear in, which aligns with the corner of the eye. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I think the profiles are actually harder to build a format for. They're just different. Most other front facing, even if it's downward or upward perspective, you still have things relatively, in front of you, where profiles are just, I don't know, I always found them harder. So where the mouth is, I put a little straight line here to indicate it, just because we're doing measurements. But again, we're going to need to do some of those triangular angle shapes that are facing this way. And this is relatively difficult to explain, but I just want to show you guys how that would look. For the mouth, we're going to go upward with the upper lip, down with the lower lip, and we're going to make a little V. And we're going to connect the top of that V to the bottom of the nose. And then we're going to bring the bottom part of that V in for the bottom lip. And then we're just going to connect it for the chin. And you can round these. For the nose, for the nostril, it's going to just be a straight line. It's going to curve up slightly, kind of in another like partial V, but you're going to start at the corner, or not the corner, but the, what do I call this? Let's put the little side corner in so I can have something to tell you where to go from. So we're going to go close to this outer edge here, come in a little bit and make yourself a little line, a little nostril line. And if that got too out of control with the too much marks, then you can come in with your eraser and just kind of clean it up a little bit. So now you can create the bridge of the nose. And you're going to go straight in between those eyelash lines. And I know there's still a flat line coming down here, but usually that will disappear with the shading. And if you want to know exactly where to put the neck, you take your pencil and you start to make a little indication of the forehead here. Just kind of curve it back a little bit, and then you come down, and right about here in the same stroke or motion, you'll just put the neck. A lot of times when people are sitting sideways and they're relaxed, their neck will like come out a little bit. It won't just be like this straight line coming up and down. A curve this way, or it'll be a curve this way. Either way, it's pretty much in between the end of the jawbone and the front of the chin. So it's pretty much like right in the middle. Imagine like somebody swallowing, from their mouth here, it's gonna go this way, and this is where their neck is. I don't know. I hope that was a good explanation. I don't know. Ears aren't something I draw a whole lot, so I'm just going to give some like general shading in here. There's often a whole lot of shadow going on here, more than you would think. This one will have a little bit more obvious guideline showing that you can still incorporate a lot of it. Like this one here is going to end up in the side hairline, and this one here will just end up in the main shading. You can still kind of lighten it up with your eraser, but so for the bottom lip, I'm going to put a little shadow. I'm going to extend the corner of the mouth a little bit. And for the top lip, we're going to do this upward motion and create another type of like V. And the Cupid's bow is going to be super flattened, just like the iris. It's there, but you almost can't see it. And I notice when I try to just do it rounded or just straight like this, it just kind of doesn't really look right to me. So I'm going to make that other little highlight line like we did when I was first showing you this. One up here. And a lot of times when you're looking at someone from the side, it'll appear that their mouth is like slightly open or parted. Even if it's closed, it'll have this upward look with a lot of like darkness under the top lip. Give a little bit of a lighten up this guideline there. And I'm gonna lighten up the top lip a little bit. And we're gonna work on the hairline. So when you're looking at someone from the side, you will see a little bit of their, what's going on, wrong side. A little bit of what's going on the other side, with the forehead in the front of that, and then that'll sweep down. So again, if you're doing bangs or, that's gonna be different, but hairline always grows upward. I'm going to sweep this around and I'm going to put it behind her ear. We're going to have a little bit of the hair coming forward in front of the ear, just for simplicity's sake. I'm going to make this a super simple. And this will be the back of the head indicator with this line here. We're going to curve it toward the top. Top of people's heads aren't completely round. They somewhat flatten right here. The skull has these bones that fuse together at the top. You know, if you learned that with babies, they have the little fontanelle that turns into the bones fuse together and they make this flatter area. And I'm just going to stylize this a little bit. Do some little scribble shading and put some shadow behind the ear, underneath the ear where the jaw and the ear meet. And then usually under profiles, the shadow under the chin is pretty extreme. I'll darken this and shade it more with the brush, but for now, that's what we're doing. Okay. So I'm going to go into the eye again for a second, and I'm going to bring down a line from the eyebrow to the corner of the eye, just a light line, because that's going to be a shadow that indicates the meeting of the eyelid with the inner corner. And I'm going to create a little bit of the outer edge of that eyelid. And it's real easy for things to like just suddenly look wrong because the angles can go off. Like that doesn't really look right to me because I went too round. So I'm going to lighten that, kind of erase it a little bit, and come back in later with the shader. Later with the shader, it rhymes. Alright, so I'm going to use my shader to kind of blend in the hair a bit. And I'm going to shade under the eyebrow. And I'm going to shade the cheek because the cheekbone is usually really, really prominent. An interesting shading mistake I didn't realize until I had been doing it, and then I didn't do it one day and I went, oh, that looks better. On the side of the face, when you're doing a cheekbone shading, a lot of times people will leave this part light, really, really light, just like the top here, and it will give this odd look as if the jaw is kind of coming forward. So what I like to do is shade the cheekbone and then bring it down just a little bit to make this part slightly darker as well. I don't know, to me it just looks better. And you can always come in and, you know, lighten up some of this to give it more contrast on the cheekbone. But yeah, I don't know, I like the way that kind of gradates down into a darker, I guess, skin tone. We're just doing monochromatic, but you know. So I'm going to shade also on the side of the nose, coming like in a curve. You'll notice when you're looking at someone from the side, their cheek kind of rounds out a little bit. That comes under the eye and next to the nose. And you have this like slightly rounded. I'm just going to draw it in a little bit. I'm going to take it from the corner of the nose and make just a slightest little, and then I'm going to give a little bit of a shadow underneath the nose, not a whole lot, but just enough to match what we have going on under the chin. Now I'm just softening edges, and I'll come in a second with my darker pencil. I'll do a little bit more hair. Oops, kind of went too far in on the ear there, but you could always lighten that up with your eraser. See, even though we've done the ear, the proper measurements, it still looks kind of small to me. You know, I'm like always afraid of making it look too big, but then it ends up usually looking too small. So I'm using my darker black charcoal pencil now, and giving that just a little bit of contrast with that shading. So I don't know, as I was, you know, saying before, profiles, they're their own thing. They're not, they're slightly different as far as the format that is translatable, like the one we did up here. For that one, I have been experimenting with like upward and downward facing profiles, and those measurements still translate. They seem to work really well. Profile is just a little bit different, but I was still surprised to see that the same measurements translate as far as distance between the eyes and the nose and the lips and the chin. So that was really all I really needed to do was add a third line in here to indicate the back of the head, and you know, that seemed to be all it needed. I will be doing the other positions, the upward and downward facing, probably next week. I want to work on them just a little bit more. I'm pretty satisfied with what I've figured out with them measurement wise, but I still want to work on that a little bit before I show you guys. But I had been doing profiles for the last like month or two, and I was just curious after I had done this, the one up here, whether or not it would translate to the profile. Although my preferred method to do the profile is just straight up, like just draw the profile and then just work on it after that. But it doesn't always 100% turn out correct because I'm not doing any measurements. I'm just going on, just eyeballing it. This one, the only thing that seems different from my intuitive, just, you know, just draw it straight up, is that this looks slightly flatter, only because I used the initial guideline is straight, but you know, that can always be adjusted. And I do like that it gives me a better idea of where the back of the head is and where the ear goes. I feel like I'm not struggling with that placement anymore. So yeah, we're pretty much done. Just going in and darkening, you know, the corners of the eye, the eyelashes. My favorite thing usually to do is the eyes and the iris, but there's not a whole lot going on in a profile, so mostly you're just working on your the shading and making sure that the mouth doesn't look weird. Okay, guys. I believe that's it. So like I said, I'll be coming out with a couple more as a part of this little series, and I will see you guys in the next one.